Buenas tardes, estamos aquí en Bishop con Franco. Hello, Franco.
How you doing?
What's your name?
Franco Vescovi.
How old are you?
I am 44 years old.
Where are you from?
I am from Southern California, Orange County, Santa Ana. Lived in Los Angeles for a little while, but from Southern California.
Mostly. When you first met the tattooing?
So I came into tattooing 26 years ago. I was 17 years old. I was in high school. I used to draw fake tattoos on people in high school. And one year during the summer of between 11th and 12th grade, I had a cousin who had just got out of prison, and he gave me the recipe to make a homemade tattoo machine. And my cousin was from the same city as Freddie Negretti. So I would always go to San Gabriel and see Freddie Negretti's tattoos, and I was always impressed how good they were. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to tattoo. I wanted to tattoo like Freddie. So we made our homemade machine with a Walkman motor, with a guitar string, very homemade jailhouse style machine. And that was 26 years ago. It was a rotary machine that ultimately led me to Bishop, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that was my first introduction to tattooing. I came back to school in the 12th grade, and I told everybody at school that I do real tattoos now. Everybody wanted them. You know how kids are. So my first tattoo I did was on a girl. She wanted a spider on her boob. So I did a small spider. I was very nervous because, that was my first tattoo. Single needle. I had to make the machine. I had to make the needle. So everything was homemade. So my confidence was really not there, But my desire to tattoo was stronger than my fear. So I took her to the park up the street after school, and I tattooed her on the picnic bench. And it was the first time I felt the difficulty of tattooing, the needle going into the skin, the bouncing, and too deep, not too deep. It was very tricky. I still remember it was just very tricky. It was not like drawing on paper. It wasn't like painting. It wasn't like markers. It was very interesting, but something magically happened. I became addicted to it. There was something sacred about it. So as an artist, I was an artist my whole life, but that was something that I tapped into. It was like a spirit I tapped into, and now it wanted my soul. So that was my first experience tattooing, and I was 17 years old, and that was 26 years ago.
Then that was your first tattoo you do, but which one is your first for your body?
So I have an interesting story. For the first 9 years of my career as a tattoo artist, I didn't have any tattoos. No tattoos. Why? Because my mother did not want me to get any. I had a really cool mother, rest in peace, and she begged me not to get them. I always used to I used to joke with her and tell her, if you ever pass away, I'm going to get your face tattooed on me, which I did. That was my first tattoo. So I'll show you my first tattoo here in a little bit. It was done by Jack Rudy, who is a legend. So I'm proud to say I got my first tattoo done by Jack Rudy, who was and is still a mentor of mine and single needle master. So yeah, that was my first tattoo. It was 8 hours, and it was a portrait of my mother. Yes.
Which is your first shop you met?
The first tattoo shop I ever worked at, a little bit of backstory. I was going to school in Long Beach. It was like an art graphic design school. It was called Brooks College. And I used to hang out with a friend of mine who had a sister that owned a tattoo shop in Huntington Park, Body and Mind. So he knew, at that time I was tattooing everybody at college in the dorm rooms, you name it. I was tattooing Julio G from 92.3 The Beat. He was telling everybody about me, and it was just this world of tattoos, and but no professional studio. I was afraid. I didn't think I was good enough. So my friend told me that they were hiring, and he thought I was good enough for an interview. So I picked up, her name was Leticia. I picked her up from her house over there in Compton. She made me give her a ride. I picked her up, we went to Huntington Park, and she interviewed me, and then she started me that same day. And so that my first studio was Body and Mind in Huntington Park off of Florence and Seville. And the first person I met was Happy. Happy took me in, back then, Happy, he looked like a gangster. He was quiet. But when I first started talking to him, I realized what a nice guy he is. And so here I am with no tattoos, and he's tripping out on me, and we just became really good friends. He welcomed me in and showed me the ropes and made me feel at home. I used to tattoo in the station right next to this really cool Pint mural. So Pint did this crazy character, and I used to always look at that like, who's that? Like that guy's really good. And he's all Pint. He works here too, but he just comes and goes, here and there. So yeah, that was my first studio, Body and Mind, and then my first professional artist that I worked with was Happy, and till this day he's one of my best friends and my favorite tattoo artist in the entire world.
Which one is your first expo?
So, first tattoo expo. At that time, you're talking 95, 96, 97. There was not too many tattoo expos, but there was a big one, the Ink Slingers Ball. That one was like not only one of the very few tattoo conventions, it was like the elite. Like everybody who's anybody was there. Guys like Bob Tyrrell, Tom Renshaw, Carrie Barbara, Paul Booth, Jack Rudy, Gil Monty. And that was the first one I went to. And I went, there was one year I was like, I'm going to go finally. I drove from Orange County to Hollywood over at the Palladium, and I went in and just started walking around, and it was almost like entering heaven. It was like I was so excited to be there. It was just like the best thing in the world. I could still remember the energy. Just looking at all these tattoo artists, and keep in mind, I'm a beginner at that time, and I'm not the best, and I'm trying to be the best, and that's my desire. And now I'm looking at the best. They're in front of me now. The first time I got to see Paul Booth, the first time I got to really meet Jack Rudy, and the first thing all those guys said was, "Where's your tattoos?" So my beginning was a little rough because I had to prove myself, not for how I looked, but who I was at the time even. I had to really prove myself through my artwork, through my dedication, and through my hard work. Because right away, I got judged for not having tattoos. So it was a tough road at first, but I was so hungry that I just kept going, pushing through. But Body and Mind to Ink Slingers Ball in Hollywood, that was my first convention.
You have some memories about this working hard to prove, so you can.
Yeah. So just the other day, I was in Berlin, and I was talking to a Russian tattoo artist, and I said to him, "Why are you guys so good? Why are there so many good artists coming from Russia? Like, is it something you put in the water? Is it something you put in the food? Like, why are there so many really good tattoo artists coming from Russia? Like, what's the secret?" And he said, "The secret is, in Russia, everybody's very hungry. The tattoo artists in Russia, they're way more hungry than tattoo artists in America because it's very cold over there. There's a lot of poverty in Russia. And so when you decide to become a tattoo artist in Russia, you're fighting against all these really good tattoo artists that are amazing. So every tattoo artist in Russia, if they want to eat, if they want to make money, they have to be the best. So they are extremely hungry. They try 100 times harder than the other guys. They push their envelope as much as it can be pushed and then some. That same mentality is the mentality I had even in the beginning when I first started tattooing. I was never satisfied with my work. I was continually pushing the envelope. I would study the way people tattooed because, of course, back then you couldn't just pull up a YouTube video and watch it for hours, in your own home. I had to and we're talking back then, you weren't really allowed to stand at a tattoo booth and watch Paul Booth tattoo or watch Jack Rudy tattoo. That was kind of forbidden. It was like, take a couple of looks and keep walking. But if you're the guy hanging out, staring and watching them tattoo, usually they'll tell you to beat it. Like, hey, what are you doing? And it's because they were protecting their secrets, you know? So I was that guy. I was the guy just very carefully looking at these people, Jack Rudy, Freddie, Tom Renshaw even, you know, and Dino Cook, you know, looking at these guys, tripping out on their work. And yeah, it was pretty fun back then in those days. But just, I was always hungry. And I think that's the key to becoming a good artist, is you have to be starving and you have to push the envelope every single chance you get.
You have some book or magazine. What was important back then?
Yeah, so back then, you know, there was no Instagram, and so to get your name out in the tattoo world, you had to go to conventions and win awards. You had to get featured in magazines. That was the only way the tattoo world, would know who you are. You had to be in a magazine. So if this magazine gets circulated around the globe, now people in Germany, now people in Italy know your name. So you start to become this popular artist, right? So you become this good artist who's now popular because everyone knows you now because they all buy the magazines. Nowadays, nobody buys magazines anymore. You don't need to. But back then, that was the lifeline for a tattoo artist. If you wanted to be plugged into the tattoo world, you got to get all the magazines. All the 4 or 5 subscriptions would be coming to my house. And that was how we would plug into people and meet the people from all around, Tintin and, you know, all these great artists from around the world. You know, it was plugging into them through the magazines, and that was really all we had. So magazines back then were really important.
A little bit go to backwards. When you first beginning, which was your social background?
When I started tattooing, like my social background, really, I mean, it wasn't really nothing. I was just a student. I was in high school. I love artwork. I used to do t-shirts, airbrushing, drawings for people. I would paint murals for people in their bedrooms or anywhere, you know. So I was always doing art, and I was always doing business. I was always selling my art. So, but yeah, I was just a high school student. I was about 17 years old, 16, 17 years old when I really started. And that was kind of, you know, who I was at the time when I started, just a young, hungry kid. Tattoos weren't popular, right? So I still look back like, that's weird. It's just a strange thing how I got into tattooing. It was, it's almost like it found me. I didn't look for it, it found me.
Which shop was your first shop?
So going from Body and Mind, it was a rough neighborhood. It was a rough crowd. You know, Happy was my best friend back then tattooing, so I kind of followed him wherever he went. And the shop at the time, you know, went through a couple of different owners, and so I was there working, and then Happy had got a job at another tattoo shop that's kind of legendary and has a lot of history and a lot of people passing through it. Guys like Mike Brown and Cartoon and Baby Ray, you know, Mike Arendane. A lot of people passed through this shop called LA Tattoo. It was on Hollywood and Las Palmas. I think now it's called California Tattoo, but back then it was called LA Tattoo, and a lot of the big names passed through there. So Happy got a job there, and he was really happy to have a job there. It's like, oh yeah, I'm working at LA Tattoo, and it's like a good shop to be at. So he's like, I can get you a job here too, because there's this guy named Mr. Cartoon, and he's about to quit, and you can take over his position. So that's exactly what happened. So I followed Happy to LA Tattoo, and I think I worked with Cartoon for a couple days, and even back then he was a legend. So it was like, oh, I get to work with Cartoon for a couple days. And then he transferred over to Spotlight Tattoo, Bob Roberts. And so then I got to work with, at the time it was Baby Ray, it was Happy, it was Double D, and it was Mike Arendane. That was the crew. I think Mike Brown had just left, and so it was this legendary crew of guys. I learned a lot from Baby Ray. I mean, he's an old timer and he doesn't play any games, so he was like the drill sergeant. Like nobody would get out of line or you would be in trouble. So it was a fun shop. So I went from Body and Mind to LA Tattoo, and so Body and Mind to LA Tattoo, and then from there had a little bit of trouble with the owner, so I just I got fired. We exchanged words. You know, back then and even now, it's like you get these guys that own tattoo studios and they don't tattoo. It's just a business for them. And even back then, it bothered me. So I didn't agree with something that many people, they understood. It was I didn't agree with some of the things he was doing, so I wouldn't listen to him. So since I wouldn't listen to him, he told me I'm out. So I said, you know what? I'm going to open up my own studio then. So I went, at the time I was living in LA, back and forth, living in LA, in downtown, right next to Cartoons building. So I was living in these lofts, half of the week, and then I would drive down to Orange County and stay at my dad's house the rest of the week. And then, so I just full on went back down to Orange County and just started, thinking about how am I going to open up my own studio. It was just really like, I want to do what I want to do, and I don't want to listen to anyone else. So I opened up a tiny little shop. It was maybe about 200 square feet. When I say tiny, I'm talking tiny, small. It was like a bedroom. So I rented an office in a building, and so that was my first studio. It was called Avante Art and Design. I was doing graphic design, murals, T-shirts, logos, tattoos, anything you wanted that was creative, I would do it out of there. But tattooing was my main chunk of what I did with my time. They didn't know I was tattooing, so they found out I was tattooing, so they kicked me out. When they kicked me out, I was always scared to get a building, a store and a shopping center next to a Starbucks or next to a restaurant, like those types of shopping centers. So when I got kicked out of this little spot that I was renting because I was tattooing and I wasn't supposed to, I wanted to get like a shop, a real shop, in a shopping center, like a busy shopping center. But I was scared and I was nervous about the rent, because I think at the time back then I was paying like $200 for my little office. That's very cheap, right? So, and I was piercing. Happy taught me how to pierce. So I was piercing and tattooing at the time. So what we did is I was working out at the gym with a local tattoo artist named Sean. And Sean had a tattoo studio in my city, Lake Forest, California. And it was called Skin Expressions. And it was a small tattoo shop upstairs. And he always had dreams to open up a bigger studio also. So we're working out at the gym one day, and we were kind of enemies at first. It was like, back then it was like, you have two tattoo studios in one city, naturally you're not friends. It's like, who's the other guy? It's like two gangs. But so one day we're working out, and I end up liking him, and he ends up liking me. And so we became friends, and I was like, he's a nice guy. So we're just talking about tattoos, and then he tells me, it's very ironic. So I'm telling him I got kicked out, and he's like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna open up another shop, but I want to go bigger, but I'm scared. And he goes, maybe I'll open up a shop with you. He goes, I want a bigger shop. And I'm like, you know what? Let's open up a bigger one together. So we kind of talked about that, and then nothing happened. And then I saw him at the gym a week later, and he goes, man, I just got kicked out also. The owner doesn't want tattooing there either, and we pissed him off, and he's not going to renew our lease. So he was really scared. And I said, this is meant to be. So we went looking for a place, and I found one in Lake Forest. At the time, that one was called Orange County Ink House, OC Ink House. It is pretty popular. A lot of names went through there, and a lot of fun stuff happened there. It was a good shop. It was a street shop. A lot of walk-ins, especially back then. We were one of the few tattoo studios in Orange County, and one of maybe two in South Orange County. So we were there in the beginning. And so that was like my real tattoo shop that I owned with my partner Sean, and we had that shop for about 10 years.
10 years, huh?
Yeah.
You remember some artists to work with?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So some of the artists that passed, we had tons of guest artists. You know, some of the artists that passed through there was, you know, like Joel Bones. Cameron, we had so many artists pass through there back in the days. But like I said, it was just a street shop, really. You know, it was a street shop, and we were just happy to be there. It was a fun studio. But as time moved on, realized that you know, back then, of course, you know, tattooing was just really getting popular, and I was young, and everyone wants to party, everyone wants to drink, everyone wants to have a good time. And I got tired of that life, and so my partner and I, we just really didn't have the same vision anymore. I wanted to go to the next level, and he was content just staying there. So I ended up just giving him the shop, and I said, you could have it, you could move on and keep this one, but I'm going to open up my own. And so that's what I did. I opened up Vatican Studios. That was about 11 years ago. So we've been here for about 11 years. And I wanted something different. I was inspired by Cartoon Studio, which is like this little warehouse in this warehouse district with nobody around, you know, no walk-ins, nobody, you know, nobody looking through the window. So I found this cool little spot here, and I built up a really nice shop that's like, you have to like kind of like come in to see it, you know. It's from the outside it looks like everything else, but it was my dream to have like this magical studio that's got so many crazy elements, paintings on the wall, fish tanks, nice furniture, nice, you know, Venetian plaster on the walls, woodwork. I mean, I threw everything I can think of, you know, in the shop. I don't even know where the money came from. It was just everyday tattooing, giving money to the construction workers, and yeah, it was pretty interesting. But that was my own shop. No partners, nobody to tell me what to do again. And if I wanted this color wall, that's what it was going to be. And I just knew I wanted a shop. I didn't want too many people to work there. I wanted it to be real special. When we had Ink House, we might have been the first studio, maybe even in the world, definitely most likely in the United States, definitely in Orange County, for sure in South Orange County. We were one of the first studios to rip down all the flash and to make it like a gallery. And I remember everybody used to talk shit on me because of that. That's not a tattoo studio. That's a, you know, everybody was against it. Everybody thought that a tattoo studio had to have flash on the walls and this and that. And I was tired of it. I was like, I wanted something different. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I didn't want the same thing that everyone else had. I didn't think I was better than anybody. I was just personally tired of the same look. So I just ripped down the walls, redid it, you know, like a salon, you know. And that was like the first. Then I had a grand opening, and it's funny because a lot of the people that were teasing me, and it was all in fun, you know. Certain friends of mine that I won't mention that were teasing me, they ended up doing their shop the same way a couple years later. Compton David, he's one of my favorite people in the industry, but he's one of the historians and the gatekeepers of history and tattoo world, and he's always saying, man, you were one of the first, and then everybody followed. And it was just fun because it's like, I actually am glad people are putting effort into creating this environment. Like when you go into people's studios now, it's like you don't really see flash on the wall anymore. It's just, you see this nice woodwork, and I enjoy that. I love that. Not saying I started it or created it, but it's just a fun story. it was true. It happened. I got ridiculed and made fun of, and then now it's just kind of becoming the norm. You get a studio now, you want to make it look so nice, you know. But I love it.
When you start to build machines for other persons?
So my entrance to machine building, it really started in 1994, 26 years ago, as you know, this young 16-year-old with a recipe on how to make a rotary machine, homemade of course. And I broke open a Walkman, took out the motor, went to the hobby store and bought a bunch of mechanical pens and copper tubing, batteries, wires, and I just made my own tattoo machine, and it was a rotary direct drive. And so I obviously got intimate with every part of a rotary machine. You know, I had to make my own needles, make my own tubes. It wasn't even, you know, making your own machine at the time. I had to make the needles, I had to make the rubber band, I had to make the cam and bearing, I had to make the whole thing. So from the beginning I was able to take a deep look at what a machine consists of. And I fell in love with that too. When I first made my first machine, it was like love at first sight. It was so much fun. I made probably 10 or 15 machines throughout a 3-year course for other people. I would even back then I was always trying to make a better shitty machine, better homemade machine, better homemade. And so I just kind of fell in love with it, you know, giving them away to certain artists, and just, you know, fell in love with making machines back then, 26 years ago. And then I stopped making machines because I started buying cosmetic machines for eyebrows, and I was still scared of the big iron ones, you know, the coils. I was scared of those ones. And so I finally, 4 years into tattooing, I went from homemade to cosmetic to Mickey Sharps. And the Mickey Sharps, man, it was heavy. Coming from a rotary machine, that thing was like really heavy. So I tried to use it off and on for a couple of years, and I did, and I used various coil machines, you know, some Catfish Carls. I mean, I had some really good machines that since then disappeared. I really wish I had some. I had some Jim Dandies. I mean, I had some old school machines that were really cool, you know, and creeper machines. So I never really liked coils. It was like a constant fight. It's like you have a coil machine, you're constant. It's like a woman who is, you know, expensive, right? It's like you always have to keep doing stuff to make her happy. It's like these coil machines, it's like you always have to keep tweaking them and doing certain things and bending the rods and getting new capacitors to make it run like it did the day before. And so I was always tired of the inconsistencies of coils. Of course, there's good builders out there, and there's people that you know, can tattoo anything a guy with a rotary can do, but you know, not a lot of us are mechanically inclined, especially at the rate that the tattoo artists were exploding to be, going from a couple to 10, 20 to a couple hundred to a couple thousand to tens of thousands to worldwide hundreds of thousands. I mean, the knowledge on coils got lost quickly. It started getting lost 15 years ago on how to tune your own machines. So I was just not happy with coils, and I wasn't happy with the rotary machines either that I was using, especially cosmetic ones, and I felt like there could be a better rotary machine. So I started taking a look at all the technology that was available, from my first direct drive that I made to the ones that were currently on the market, like Swash Drive, and some of the old school ones that were made in the 70s even, and I have a couple here. And so it was just taking a look at all that and then realizing, you know what, I'm just going to make my own. I could do it. I thought it was easy. That's, you know, it was not. It was not easy. But at the time I thought it was, and I'm glad I thought it was easy, because otherwise I wouldn't. If I'd known what I know now, I probably would have not started. So I put all my money into hiring this engineer and working on this idea to make a machine, a rotary machine. And so what I did was I just slowly started drawing concepts, trying to figure out how to make it better. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I did. You know, I had the overall fundamentals down. I knew that it had to be a rotary machine. I knew that it couldn't be too powerful or too little power. Wasn't so familiar with strokes back then, really. It was just like, it just had to go up and down. I knew that. But there we are, 2007, I made my first prototype. A big fat looking, when I look at beepers, in old cell phones now, that's the same way I look at my first rotary machine. Just a big chunky square, slide, move perfectly up and down. The tattoo world wasn't ready for it because right in the beginning, people were just making fun of me. Like, what are you building? Like, what the hell is that? Because keep in mind, the only companies that were around back then were like Swash Drive, Cheyenne, and Cheyenne really was like, they were a cosmetic company that took this cosmetic rotary machine and introduced it to the tattoo market. Like, they didn't set out to make a machine for a tattooer. It was always, hey, this is made for women that do eyebrows and lips. You should try it on that dragon. So, but I still give them credit because they did this in the beginning when it wasn't popular. So because they did this in the beginning, before rotaries were popular, I have no choice as a fair human being to always give them credit for that. It's not owned by a tattoo artist. It goes against some of my principles and morals, but one of my principles and morals is being authentic, and they really were one of the first rotary machines to enter the tattoo world, even before I did. I think they came in in 2006, 2007. So they came in like a year before I did. But my machine was different. Theirs was a direct drive. Mine was slide driven. I had a swash drive. The guys from Australia, I always will give them credit too. But these guys weren't popular in America. They weren't popular with the Jack Rudies, the Steve Sotos, the Mr. Cartoons, the Nico Hurtados, the Carlos Torreses. They weren't popular amongst that crowd. I grew up with those guys. They're my brothers. I come from the school of Nico and Carlos Torres and Jack Rudy and these guys that are now very famous and legendary. A Cartoon, Jose Lopez, Chuy Quintanar, even Horitaki, going from Chicano style to other styles. But that time that I was just starting to make machines, these guys weren't really popular yet. They were just very good artists that happened to be my friends because we were all young, 25-year-old kids, 30-year-old guys that are just like loving tattoos. So, it was kind of that allowed me to be able to put a Bishop Rotary in the hands of a Nico or in the hands of a Torres or in the hands of Steve Soto. Steve Soto I love because he's always tried my machines even from day one. I remember going to the Inkslingers Ball and bringing like 10 machines, hoping I would sell some of them. And back then, I was just so excited that I ended up giving almost all of them away. I was like, you want to try it? I believed in it so much, and I got made fun of so much that I said, you know what? I'm just going to give you one. You're talking shit on this machine. We're friends. Instead of me being offended, I'm going to give you a free machine and then go do that tattoo and then come back and let me know what you think. 10 times out of 10 they would come back wanting to buy another one. Couldn't believe it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how consistent. Man, I tattooed faster. My tattoos are healing quicker. It was like magic, really. It was like they couldn't believe it. So all the feedback I got was good. There was like no negative feedback, and I knew the reasons why. The reasons why were because, when a rotary machine spins around and around, like a motor, it doesn't change. It's not like a coil, where a coil is like if the weather is different, or if there's dirty electricity, or if the bar is not bent properly, or the spring is too little or too less, or the capacitor is worn out, or the armature bar is not straight, or the contact spring is worn out and not perfect, or maybe there's a hole in the spring. Remember those days? Burnt hole in the spring? So there's none of that. This motherfucker, you plug it in and it works. And that's the beauty of a rotary machine. It either works perfect or it doesn't work at all. There's no games, you know what I mean? So that's really what it was, is I would give it to people, They would try it, they would come back, and they would want more. And from the beginning, man, I couldn't keep these things in stock. It was like, at the time I was building 5 or 10 a week, and it was just like more, and I was selling them and more. And then everybody wanted them, and then it was like they wanted to buy them from me to resell. So I had certain guys in the community buying them from me and then reselling them. And then slowly started spreading, like, this guy Franco, man, and from Orange County, he's got this new machine. I mean, rotaries were so not popular back then that they didn't even really know what to call it. It wasn't nowadays, it's like you use coil or rotary. Back then, they didn't really know what to call it. It was like, he got this crazy machine, it runs off of like a motor, like a rotary motor or something. Like, it just works so good, you gotta try it. And then everybody that would try it, all of them, the ones that would, so then it became this posse of like guys that were like, had the secret, like, oh, so now it's not just me. Now it's like Steve Soto and all these other artists that are respected, that are like, you know, vouching for me. And then it was like, no, you got to try it. And so now people became more of a believer. Like, okay, it's more people that are using it. And I used to always tell people, like, here, use it. If you don't like it, I'll take it back. So it started spreading. Guys like Joe Capobianco, were one of the first to try these machines out. I even made a Joe Capobianco special machine. I think I have a couple of them left that were pretty cool. But overall, that kind of helped spread, because you had Cheyenne, you had Swash Drive, but they were like, you know, at the time the tattoo world wasn't connected like it was now. So you had Cheyenne making a move in Europe with guys like Boris, you know, and Marani Bill, and so like, but in America it was like, what's this Bishop machine? What is that? You know, let's try it. And then next thing you know, distributors wanted to carry it, and it was just hard to keep up with the demand, really. And I didn't really know what I was doing as a young businessman either. But I'll share a quick story. Bishop almost died. It actually did die, and then it got brought back to life. So I used to build machines next door, and then I had a fire. It was Christmas of 2010. So I had a big fire, it burnt everything down practically. I had no insurance. So, and I wasn't really making money with Bishop. It was just like, if I make $3,000, I'm spending $3,000 on more supply. So that happened, and I said, damn, what am I gonna do? So I already knew I had to spend a lot of money repairing the shop. The landlord said, if you don't fix it, I'm kicking you out. So so that's kind of what happened with the fire, is that, you know, I had an alternate. I had basically, the landlord gave me an ultimatum. He said, you have to fix your whole studio or I'm kicking you out. And so I was tattooing every day, giving money to the construction. So now I'm rebuilding my studio.
Okay.
Yeah, rebuilding it again. It was just like a year old. And so here I am rebuilding it, and, you know, I decided, you know, this Bishop project, like, I can't afford it. I don't have the money. It's not making any money anyways. So we're gonna go ahead and just pull the plug, because there's no way I can do both. It's either fix the studio or make machines. And at the time I was like, I need to tattoo to survive, because that's paying the bills. So I kind of stopped making machines for like a month or so, and people just kept begging for more. I was like, I don't have any more. I don't know if I'm gonna make them anymore. No, I just had a fire, you know. Oh, okay, we heard. Yeah, we heard, man. So I don't know. Probably not gonna make them anymore, to be honest, because I don't have the money to buy aluminum. I don't have the money to pay my engineer. So I was starting to stop making machines, and I was actually okay with it. I was like, I'm not making money anyways. Who cares? Maybe one day I'll start it up again. But then something kind of happened. I had this feeling inside me that was like, you can't give up. You have to keep going. You got to keep going. And then one day I just was thinking about it. I'm like, no, I can't stop. I have to keep going. People want them. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to keep building. So it was a very, very, very tough time. I was tattooing 7 days a week, as much as I could. I had new kids that I never got to see really because I was working so much. And I was paying anything I could. Like all my money went to like feeding the kids, paying construction workers, and paying for more machines, more bishops. I was like sleeping on couches. I was eating like the same. I was going to Del Taco every day practically, and I would be like, you know, eating for like $3. Like, give me like 6 tacos for $3, you know, and just really just not spending money on anything except for those 3 things. So family, building back the shop, and then machines. And then little by little, at that time I was like, I gotta sell these, man. I can't really give away as many as I want, you know. And Bishop was really founded on me giving away a lot of machines. It was founded on me believing in my own product. And you know, I probably gave 60% of the machines away in the beginning and sold 40% of them. And it was because I believed in them so much. And so, you know, I started selling more. So now I'm giving away 15 to 20%, but selling 80. And I started taking that money in, and it started growing a little bit. And so I was like, wait a minute, oh my gosh, I can use some of the money here to help rebuild the shop. And then so it started growing a little bit more. And then it became, oh, I'm gonna tattoo and build machines and pay the shop, you know. So it took about 3 years to get the shop built back up to normal. It was very painful. And so Bishop got revived. It started growing more, and what we are today is a result of the story of the phoenix, where the phoenix rises from the ashes.
Literally.
Yeah, so I have a real phoenix story. So Bishop rose from the ashes. So when people get a bishop tattoo, when they put a bishop logo on, I always, whenever I see it on Instagram, I reach out to them. They don't have to be famous. They don't have to be anybody. I always want to make sure that they know the story. And I say, you know, what that logo means, it really means this. It means perseverance. It means if I can do it, you can do it. Because I'm no different than anybody else. I'm just the guy that never quit. So I always say that logo means no matter what happens to you, no matter what kind of trials and tribulations you have, no matter where you grow up at. I grew up in Santa Ana. I grew up in a very poor environment. I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters living in a 2-bedroom house with only a mother. Cockroaches, poverty, food stamps, buses. That whole story is mine. It's my story. I started from nothing, and I love it. I'm so proud of it. Not when I was a kid, though. I was really embarrassed, you know, of being. We were always the poor kids, you know. Like for Thanksgiving, it was like, you know, the churches would bring over food for us, and I was always embarrassed. Like, it sucks to be the poor kid. But I love it now. It was awesome. I'm so glad I didn't grow up rich. But you know, that's the story of Bishop. Bishop stands for perseverance. Bishop stands for never giving up. And so that's what that logo means, you know. It almost has nothing to do with tattooing or tattoo machines. It's the energy behind that logo. The energy behind Bishop is just that. It's if you follow your dreams and you never give up, no matter how many fires your life has, literally or non-literally, that you'll eventually reach your dreams. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so if it's a matter of when, then that means nobody can give up. Because if you give up, then you'll never get to the when. You'll never get to the dream. The dream is always there. The dream is a glimpse of reality. Like, so if you have a dream, it's not really a dream. It's you just glimpsing something that is already way over there. You just have to keep walking on the road as long as it takes until you arrive. And so that's the story of Bishop, and that's really what Bishop means, because it was almost dead. In fact, it was dead, like I said, and it got revived. Maybe God gave me the inspiration. Oh, actually not maybe. He did give me the inspiration to revive it. Only because only He knew, our Creator, God, and I believe in God, and I believe in our Creator. Only He knew what was to happen. Only He knew the story. He just inspired me to keep going. And sometimes we got to listen to the spirit that lives inside all of us, just like the Native Americans believed in, just like the Mayans believed in. You got to listen to that spirit inside of us, and you just got to go with that feeling. And that's actually my message to you guys too. Is you know, understand that this world's not real. This is a matrix. Nothing's real. Kill the ego. Quit trying to be better than the next guy. Just work. Put your head down. Work. Become a good artist. Practice every day and become good. People will notice. You know, if you want to make more money, don't try to make more money. Just try to be better. If you're a better tattoo artist, if you become better, if you become more realistic, if you could do portraits like, you know, the greats like Chewy and David Vega and all these guys, then you're gonna be able to charge more money. But you have to do it for the right reasons. All the famous artists I know, like Carlos Torres, David Vega, Jack Reed, all these guys that charge a lot of money, they didn't start out egotistically. They just started out hungry and putting their heads down and working. I see these young kids now, they're just trying to be cool. They're trying to, like, you know, get girls and get Instagram followers. Those are the guys that never make it, you know, and then people think that they're weird and they're clowns, you know. So just be authentic, be real, be more giving, be more humble, realize that this world's not really real, realize that, like, we all die, realize that, you know, nobody's better than anybody. Even some of these famous artists, when you meet them, it's like they're just regular people, you know. Like one of the most famous and humble artists is my friend Carlos Torres, who owns part of Bishop, by the way. Like, so we're a collective. So, like, I started the company, and then I love Inkies, and Carlos owned Inkies with this friend of mine named Sean, and I couldn't buy him, so we just joined forces. So it's like Carlos has a part of Bishop, and so we love Carlos. But it's all about humility, you know. That it's Bishop's a story of humility. My life story is a story of humility. I don't think I'm cool. I don't think I'm any better than anybody. I don't like to surround myself with those kind of people either that really think they're cool, you know, because those artists do exist. Those motherfuckers are out there. These pieces of shit that think that they're freaking better than everybody else just because they can do killer tattoos and they're famous, and everywhere they go people are like, you know, jocking them, you know, and then you meet them and you're like, what an asshole, you know. It's like those people are out there, and don't be one of them, you know. Don't strive to be like that asshole. Like, be humble. Strive to be like Carlos Torres. Strive to be like Jose Lopez, you know what I mean. Strive to be like those guys that are good, because the coolest people in the world are the ones that are famous. And it doesn't have to be tattoo artists. I've had the pleasure of tattooing people anywhere from Britney Spears to band members from Avenged Sevenfold and Korn to athletes like Dennis Rodman, Ryan Sheckler. I mean, shit, lots of people in my days, even before tattooing celebrities became popular. And the coolest ones were guys like Travis Barker. You know, people that are just so humble. Like, they're famous and they're cool. Like, makes you like them 10 times more. So that's who people should be striving to be like. You want to be a famous artist? Don't try to be famous. Just be good. And then if you ever do get famous, and you ever do get recognized, understand that the more humble you are, the more of an impact you can have on other people. So,
thank you, Franco.
La Casa del Tatuador lo que busca es eso, mostrar la cultura del tatuaje, de lo que se genera dentro del tatuaje, ¿no? Están las pinturas de los bodysuits, están las calaveras, están las máquinas, están los murales, ¿no? Están las piezas. Todo esto que tiene que ver con el tatuaje en sí, ¿no? Es cultura que se genera en el tatuaje. Es a lo que se dedica la casa, a mostrar la cultura que se genera en el tatuaje.